Hi, I'm Tom Benton, partner at Strategy Meets Action. And in this webinar, we'll discuss how next generation technology platforms provide the promise of transformation for property and casualty insurers. A major trend in the insurance industry, especially since the beginning of the pandemic, is that digital transformation is accelerating. In this chart, we show how technology has evolved from impacting insurance operations and efficiency in the early days of digital computing to more enabling transformation of business models. We'll also discuss how the insurance industry has been positioned compared to other industries. And as I looked at this chart and thought about the decades from the 60s through the 2020s and beyond, I thought of another institution that spanned this period, the Rolling Stones. So I've got some examples as we go along that will help us understand the length of this timeline. So in the 1960s, there was the British invasion, and the Stones had their big first US hit. It was "I Can't Get No Satisfaction" in 1965. At the same time, mainframes were becoming commercially available for the first time, and they were being used to automate manual paper-based transactions and workflows at insurers. Insurers were among the first to implement these technologies. And in the 1970s, as data moved into mainframes, the focus of insurers became more on generating reports for decision support. And insurers moved from a position of being a pioneer of digital technology use into being on par with other industries. And that is embodied a bit by the Stones hit in 1974 called "Only Rock and Roll." We were only starting to rock and roll with digital technologies in those days and not really having the impact on business model transformation. Then as we moved into the 80s and 90s, there were advances in technology that were due to the improvement of imaging devices and faster hardware. There was a statement by the CEO of Intel, Moore, and he came up with Moore's Law, which stated that the computing power would double every 2 years or so. And we saw that happen through the 80s and the 90s. It enabled new technology platforms like mobile devices and the internet. And that in turn enabled more capabilities for generating and moving data, more digital tools for improved customer experiences as well. And the Rolling Stones in 1981 had their hit song "Start Me Up," but insurers were actually starting to slow down a little bit in the adoption of these newer technologies, began to take a laggard position. Those that adopted the technologies, though, began to see impact through new business models. They saw new ways of doing distribution, new ways of providing innovation for products, and new ways to do speed to market. In the 90s, it was a decade where the Stones released 6 albums. 4 of them were live performances, though. They were beginning to have their transformation of their own from a focus from studio albums to live concerts. Then in the last 20 years, the 2000s through the 2010s, we've seen the rise of insurtech and AI-enabled platforms. These are having a greater impact on business models for insurers. We're seeing the transformation of customer experience by better use of data and more personalized products. We're seeing a move toward digital products powered by telematics and real-time data use. These have enabled usage-based insurance type products that saw their rise in the 1990s. Cloud platforms were starting to develop that enabled faster deployment and scaling of solutions through APIs and better integration. We saw existing core systems enabled more by these types of cloud solutions being deployed in the cloud. And in some places, these existing core systems had been in place since the pioneer days of the 60s and 70s. The insurance industry started catching up and started using more technology for transformation. And the Stones, at the same time, they released an album in 2005 called "A Bigger Bang." But in the 2010s, they continued to slow down and their album releases started to dwindle, and they transformed more into a live touring band. But the opposite was happening for insurers. They began speeding up their use of technology and speeding up the rate of how technology was being used for transformation. So now we're in the 2020s. And as we look through the 2020s into the 2030s, we see that the cloud is maturing. We go from cloud 1.0, which was really just enabling the ability to put solutions and data into the cloud and centralize them and provide connections to them. We're seeing that mature into more of a cloud 2.0, where cloud 2.0 is the use of technology platforms, cloud platforms, with their solutions as well for AI and database capabilities. These are embedded into solutions like AWS and Microsoft Azure. And we're seeing AI first design enabling new types of products in the insurance space, more personalized. 5G cellular networks have been rolled out, and Internet of Things devices are providing more real-time data through these networks from telematics, from home automation devices and industrial sensors. We're seeing an actual Internet of Everything, getting data from every object that's available. The Stones, in the meantime, became older and began their farewell tours. I'm sure they've had farewell tour number 1, number 2, number 3 by now, and their career is dwindling off. But transformation that continues to accelerate in the insurance industry. Insurers are implementing new technologies and becoming fast followers to tech use that's being used in other vertical industries. And as we go into the 2030s, digital transformation will continue to accelerate. So how are technologies enabling the acceleration of insurance transformation? Well, we mentioned the introduction of mobile and internet in the 80s and 90s greatly accelerated transformation for all industries. And new technology was being built on these infrastructures. And as these new technologies were deployed, they showed initial promise of transformational change. But that transformational change was only realized as they matured and leveraged the synergies with other emerging technologies. So here we see cloud services platforms mentioned. And they initially provided hosting capabilities, as I mentioned before, with servers and new access to data and solutions, which we call it the Cloud 1.0. And over time, they matured into a more transformational type of technology by the platform enabling native capabilities like AI analytics, machine learning, and others, advanced database capabilities for unstructured data, what we call Cloud 2.0. So the initial promise of the cloud is now starting to be realized over time as Cloud 2.0 is being rolled out. Next, we see APIs and microservices starting to be deployed. They've been deployed over the last few years, more increasingly at insurers as part of Cloud 2.0. And they, by using APIs, we can make more connections between solutions. Also, low-code and no-code tools have emerged. They're still maturing. They're more or less in the early days of providing the promise that they have of building applications without extensive coding knowledge. Next, we move into new user interfaces that have emerged. An example are voice interfaces like chatbots. Chatbots are maturing through the use of natural language processing. We also see augmented reality and virtual reality interactions starting to emerge. And these show the promise and the potential to interact with software and interact even with other users using what are being called metaverses. Now, powering all this is AI. AI has been around in various forms since the beginning of digital computing, but only recently is becoming more transformative through the use of machine learning algorithms. AI and machine learning are finding more uses at insurers for things like intelligent document processing, for analysis of underwriting data, for fraud analysis for claims. And those are just a few of the use cases that AI is finding. AI is still emerging and still being deployed and finding use at insurers for use cases. And as it matures, it'll begin to deliver on the promise that it has to transform the industry. Next, we've seen, I mentioned earlier about the deployment of 5G cellular networks. They enable the transfer of data, more data, faster and with lower latency, so that there are better connections between devices that are transmitting the data and the servers that are analyzing it. These have enabled the AI has enabled the use of telematics and real-time data usage through 5G cellular networks, so that we now have usage-based insurance that's actually workable and has matured. We also see the promise of faster 6G technology on the horizon, which will make this whole process even faster. And there are a few technologies that I'll mention that are just emerging, but have promised to build on these other technologies to completely transform all industries, but especially in insurance. These newer technologies are edge computing, biometrics, and quantum computing. Edge computing extends the computing ability to the location where devices are generating data. So for example, IoT devices in autonomous or semi-autonomous vehicles, think Tesla, how it uses data from its sensors and sends it back to the cloud for analysis. More and more computing will be done at the edge. It'll be done at the actual device, at the Tesla itself, so that decisions can be made faster and can be made as the sensors are pulling the data in. Then there's advanced biometrics which will make all of these complex data interactions more secure. Then quantum promises to provide exponentially faster computations, and that's going to allow the solution of more complex problems. So emerging technologies are enabling transformation, and they're enabling new insurance business models, and they're maturing from being just promising solutions to being effectively deployed solutions. Digital transformation is accelerating, and it will bring big changes to the insurance industry. So the call to action is for property and casualty insurance company leaders that you need to be prepared now for digital transformation to keep pace with the acceleration and to not fall behind. Now is the time to review your business and IT strategies to make sure you're prepared for the promise of next generation technology platforms. To learn more about how SMA is helping insurance companies to keep up with the acceleration of technology and transformation, contact Kevin Saunders. Thank you.